Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So today is another day of talking about Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, and we are covering episode 8. But before we get into it, if you haven't watched up to season 3 episode 8 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, then do not watch this video. There will be spoilers. We talk about clues that are all throughout this season and even past seasons, so I suggest watching all of the seasons before you hop into this one. And I have YouTube videos on every episode of season 3, season 2, and season 1, and I will link them up above if you want to go check them out. There are some really cool clues. Also, if you are not subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button down below. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season, and I think I need like 70 more people to subscribe in order to hit that, so help me out. Subscribe down below. After this, there's only 2 more episodes. And one more fun thing before we get into this video, I am actually doing a fall book giveaway with my friends Amanda and Anna over on Instagram. If you want to go check it out, I will link it down below. We are going to be giving away My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine, A Far Wilder Magic by Allison, Saft, and All the Dangerous Things by Stacy, Willingham. I am a big book nerd. I love the fall, autumn, Halloween season, and so we chose these 3 reads because we thought that they encompassed some really great fall reading. So if you want to enter the giveaway, all you have to do is follow at Our Shared Chapters on Instagram, subscribe to my YouTube down below, and like the Instagram post and comment below your favorite fall reads, as well as tagging a friend. I will leave all the information down below in the caption, as well as the link to the Instagram post, so you can go and check it out. It is not here on YouTube, it is on Instagram, and I do want to clarify that this is no way sponsored or endorsed by Instagram or YouTube, and that is just me and my friends doing this giveaway for fun. I'll make sure to have all the information as well as the date that it starts and ends somewhere over here as well. I'll link everything you need down below. Now, let's get into the video. So the first thing we know about episode 8, Sits Probe, is that Loretta narrates this episode. She talks about her experience seeing her first play on Broadway, No Strings Attached, and she talks about how she always wanted to be an actress. She talks about acting in the Midwest where she grew up, and that she was the best young actress in the Midwest according to a paper that her dad owned or something. So he was biased, obviously, but she says that a director agreed, came to watch her, and she knew that after school she was going to head to Broadway. But things didn't go necessarily as planned because Loretta was pregnant. So she ended up making the difficult decision to adopt out her baby to a family who were not able to conceive, and to leave him in her hometown and go to Broadway. She continues to say that acting is all about choices and that she had to make one. And she says that she didn't find success early on and began to wonder if she was ever going to find success and if she was being punished for her decision of leaving her son. We see that she gets letters from the family. Oh gosh, there's a rainbow on my face. So we see that she gets letters from the family showing her photos of Dickie, as well as a surprise that they did end up being able to get pregnant, and that now Dickie has a brother and he will never be alone. Next to the letter that she receives, we see plays by George Bernard Shaw, and they include Man and Superman, Arms and the Man, and Mrs. Warren's Profession. And the reason that I think that this is interesting is because this is not the first time that we've seen Mrs. Warren's Profession. The first time that we saw it was hanging in Kimber's dressing room. It is a poster that is hung on her wall, and if you look into it, this is a play about a woman who owns a brothel after prostituting herself for years to support her daughter, and she ends up saving enough money to buy into the business. Her daughter ends up finding out about this and is at first horrified, but then learns to kind of applaud her mother for her actions because she was doing it to protect her and to take care of her daughter. But in the end, the show kind of has a negative ending when her daughter finds out that she's still working at this brothel. Her daughter cuts her off because she no longer needs to be investing in this brothel because she has plenty of money. And I guess her daughter thinks that this is wrong morally or ethically, ends up breaking off her relationship with with her mother and moving away and swearing she'll never marry. So that's what we see when she's showing us the letter. We also see the book that Loretta made, and we learn that she made it for Dickie when he was very young to kind of follow him throughout his life and keep an eye on him. She was clearly feeling sentimental, and it's clear that she loves him, but that at the time she had chose acting over being a mother, and she's kind of questioning that decision now. So she calls Dickie her baby boy, and we see that she was indeed auditioning in order to meet him, and that she was singing Look for the Light and looking at him and seeing his reaction. So that moment in, I don't know which episode it was, 5 or 6, where she's singing for the first time as the nanny, she's making eye contact with Dickie as she's singing, you know, my darling, just look for the light, I'm a lighthouse, and like, you'll find your way back to me, kind of. So it's really sweet. So as we're going through the beginning of this episode, Loretta realizes that the book is gone, and she can only think that Oliver has taken it because no one else has been in her apartment. She writes Dickie a letter to tell him the truth because she says that it's time, and it's Sitzprobe, which is a rehearsal when the actors perform with an orchestra for the first time, and you learn if your actions have produced something harmonious or horrific, and if there's still time to make it all right. So she's kind of doing the same thing with Dickie, where she's made a decision, but she's trying to figure out whether telling him is going to let them have a harmonious relationship, whether it's going to be a disaster, and if she still has time to write this decision at the end of the day and make things better. And then we kind of get into the juice of the show, the Sitzprobe. Oliver is telling the cast to not be distracted, to pay attention, that there's definitely going to be fuck-ups, but that they're just going to push through. And right as he tells them they're going to begin, Mabel walks through the door, and Oliver immediately gets distracted and is like, okay, let's take 2. So he and Charles follow Mabel downstairs into the kind of the pit of the theater, and you can tell that Oliver is angry that Mabel has created the podcast without them, but he's also not fully apologized to her, or maybe even apologized at all, even though he and Charles talked about it last episode. And he's basically like, I told you not to mess with my show, this is my dream, like kind of like still the same rhetoric that we heard like 2 episodes ago. And so they're still fighting, but Charles is trying to be the mediator here and stop them from fighting with each other. So Mabel admits that she's crashing at Theo's place, wink wink nudge nudge for those Fable, Mio, Mayo supporters. We love Theo and Mabel. And basically she tells them that her gut is telling her that it's Dickie, and that that's just who she's looking at right now. That's who she's investigating. And Oliver kind of says, okay, that's fine, he's not in the cast, so like, yeah, it's definitely Dickie. We jump back to Oliver returning to the stage, and we see the performance of Creatures of the Night, and it is amazing. Jonathan is doing an incredible job, and I'm just so excited to see more of the music from this show. I know they're going to release an album later on that includes all of the songs from the show Death Rattle Dazzle, and right now they already have Look for the Light out, and I think the Patter song for Which of the Pickwick Triplets Did It is also out on Spotify. So it's just really exciting because it's great theater music. Like it just got me. So as they're singing Creatures of the Night, we see that Greg has been released from jail and all charges have been dropped. There's an article that has been published and everyone gets a text notification, and it's literally while mid-song, so they're all kind of looking around, getting distracted. Mabel sees it. Cliff gets a text from this person named Casey saying, did you see that creepy guy didn't kill Ben? I did want to mention that I'm pretty sure there isn't a Casey in the cast, so maybe this was just like a way for us to see that someone is messaging Cliff like, look, like that crazy guy is out. But I thought it was also interesting that they make this announcement during the Creatures of the Night song, because it's possible that this is a metaphor for the fact that there's still a creature of the night out there. There's still someone, the murderer, who is within the cast looking like one of them, someone who is still a threat to other people's lives. So that was interesting. Then we see Detective D storm in and say that someone in the room is a killer, and Detective D recognizes Kimber as someone who played Roxy from the musical Chicago. And this is an interesting like nod because the movie Chicago, the character Roxy is cheating on her husband with this man who ends up saying that he's going to leave her and, you know, starts packing his stuff, and she shoots him when he calls off their engagement and murders him, only to lie to her husband and say that she was trying to shoot a burglar, and ends up convincing her husband to be her defense. And the whole play takes place in jail, but the whole premise that she's like this promiscuous woman who's cheating on her husband and then ends up murdering her lover once he says that he's going to leave her is just an interesting nod. Like, we keep getting this image of like a promiscuous woman with the idea of like Kimber's character, but not necessarily in a negative way. Like I said with Mrs. Warren's Profession, it's not necessarily that they're bad-mouthing the woman for like her sexuality and basically making her own monetary advances through her sexuality, but there's definitely kind of that idea of like sex and promiscuity and like a possible, I don't know, like women tricking men, and it all seems to surround Kimber in that way. So it's interesting that we keep getting this nod to like, does Kimber have something to do with this where she was like sleeping with Ben? I mean, that's the character that they tried to paint in the beginning, that she ended up saying, no, that's not me. I didn't want to sleep with him. I just wanted his endorsement for my product. But yeah, it's just interesting that this idea keeps coming up. So after Dee and Kimber have this moment together, we hear her say that Ben Glenroy was poisoned and that they tried to cover it up. I'm not really sure who they is. Maybe like the perpetrator tried to cover it up. I don't know if she means that they tried to pay the police department to cover up the toxicology report, like they had like a cop on their side, or whether it was a specific kind of poison that became really diluted in the system the way that Mabel had talked about originally. But basically Detective Dee says that they poisoned Ben and tried to cover it up, and that that's how she knows that it's someone in this room. Oliver asks to speak to Detective Dee off stage because he doesn't want her to be taking his cast downtown when they're supposed to be practicing. And Donna and Cliff end up coming over to him very upset, and originally we're like, oh, they're upset that the police officer is here. But no, they're upset because Maxine, the critic, is there for their sits probe, and Cliff looks like he's going to cry. And Donna says that they never let critics sit in on sits probe because it's such a disaster usually as they're trying to get everything to work together. And she says that there's a reason that they don't come to sits probe, and she tells Oliver not to fuck it up. Donna goes on to say, we are literally lighting cash on fire every minute we are in this theater. And we hear Donna say this a lot about this play, where it's like, I'm losing money, she's losing money, the play is a failure, etc., etc. So we're going to talk about that more in the theories portion. So Oliver suggests that the interrogations happen at the theater rather than downtown, and Detective Dee basically relents and says she's going to go find an interrogation room. Oliver continues to say that he wants to protect his show. This is kind of like his big moment, and Mabel says that the only way that he's really going to protect it is if they find who the murderer is, and Oliver kind of realizes that she's right and decides, okay, then we're going to need to find out who this murderer is. Howard comes racing in and says that he had a huge break in the case, but that he only wants Mabel to come investigate because she's the ace investigator with a closet full of cashmere, and we know that Howard is a sweater guy. So he shows Mabel that the shredder was the thing that was making the sound the night that Ben died when the office was locked, and he says that this must have been what was making that noise, and someone must have been shredding an important document. So he decides that there must be a clue within the shreds, and he says that he can reassemble the strips of paper to figure out what they were shredding, and also he wants to be on the podcast. So Mabel says, okay, Howard, you reassemble this puzzle, let's figure out what this clue is. And the guys, Oliver and Charles, are required to get into the room with Detective Dee during her interviews so that they can figure out some clues about the cast. So overall, a whole mess of things happens with Charles coming in and out of his dressing room because that's where Dee is investigating. He throws the weighted blanket on himself and he falls to the couch. Then he starts rehearsing his patter song until Detective Dee kicks him out. So we see him kind of like go back and forth within the room, basically just distracting her as she tries to talk to Ty, and then later on she's talking to Bobo. While this is happening, Loretta is confronting Oliver about the book, and he admits that he did take it, and he says that he trusts her and that she doesn't have to tell him anything. But after he says this, he kind of waits there like, but you're gonna tell me, right? And she's like, no. So we can see that that the truth is that Oliver really doesn't trust Loretta. He may really like her, but he doesn't trust her. And this is kind of the same thing that happened with Charles and Joy. It's the same situation. As he's talking to Loretta, Oliver says, oh, well, it's not like we think you're the murderer. Anyway, Mabel says that the killer is Dickie and she's always right. And we see Loretta begin to freak out as she asks him why. And Oliver says, the creepy brother, always coming in second, always taking care of Ben and taking his shit. Why not? We move on to see that Bobo is interviewing with Detective D, and we learn that his mother only has 1 foot, and Oliver ends up bursting into the room, and Oliver ends up bursting into Charles's dressing room and basically saying that he's so sorry for Charles and that he's so anxious because of his patter song and to please ignore him. But it also seems like he's trying to stay in the room and listen to the interviews, and once again, Detective D kicks him out and tells him to get lost. Meanwhile, Mabel is looking for Scotch tape to help Howard put this puzzle together, this strips of paper puzzle, which honestly in real life would probably be basically impossible. And Loretta comes over and helps her out by giving her Scotch tape and telling Mabel that she wants to help find the murderer. And we know that this is because Loretta wants to protect Dickie. She's afraid that Dickie's going to go to jail and that if Mabel thinks it's Dickie, then that's who everyone's going to think it is. So in order to protect him, she says that she wants to help out, and Mabel basically immediately says to her, you know, killers sometimes insert themselves into investigations, kind of like accusing Loretta of being a murderer, to which Loretta laughs and then says, oh no, like, I just want to help, really? So Loretta ends up making an excuse that this is supposed to be her Broadway debut and that's why she wants to help, and then she kind of says, took me long enough, and sits down, and she's definitely looking pretty dejected. Mabel comes up to her then, having a soft spot for her, and says, you know, it's okay if you're a late bloomer, I am too, and basically tells Loretta that it's not a bad thing that her Broadway debut is when she's, you know, older. It's okay, but we definitely see some feelings of resentment from Loretta for the decisions that she made when she was young. You know, she gave up Dickie because she thought that it would allow her to become this actress and to chase her dream, only to realize that getting onto Broadway was much harder than she anticipated it would be. And now that she's made this decision and she's separated from her son and has been for so long, she seems like she might actually regret it. Loretta argues that she doesn't think Dickie did it and she tries to protect him, but Mabel argues that he had access to Ben's food, would have been bringing him food, you know, before the murder happened, and so it would have been easy for him to poison Ben. Loretta then goes on to try and pin it on Bobo and then on KT because she's a bitch. We see that it's time for Charles to sing his patter song, and Detective D and the other police come out to watch because she's basically invested in his failure, and the song is incredible. Like, Charles does, and I mean Steve Martin does an incredible job here. The way that he uses his inflection and just makes the song so entertaining. It was honestly so amazing to watch. And I've also seen people suggest that the triplets represent 3 different people in the cast, and so in the song, this is like the full version of it, he goes into talking about the 3 different triplets, the little girl and 2 little boys, and kind of describing who they are. So yeah, he goes through and describes the 3 different little babies with their different small personalities, and but yeah, people have said that they think that might be a description of the triplets in the cast and 3 possible murderers. We see Mabel and Howard attempting to put the shredded pieces back together, and we also see Dickie being pulled by the police, and you can tell that Loretta is really freaking out about this, and he comes over to her and says that he can no longer do dinner because the police want to talk to him, and when she asks why, he says, well, it can't be anything good. We also see that Howard ends up being pretty depressed because he can't put the pieces together, and Mabel ends up encouraging him to tell him to keep going, and he shows us a clue, a piece of paper that he has from the shredder, and I will talk about that more in the theories section of this video, but basically it looks like a little slip of paper and it says the date on it, the date of opening night. So the trio meet back up, and Oliver and Charles end up telling Mabel that they did it. They got all of the interrogation footage on tape, and they say that they basically tricked Detective D into becoming invested in Charles's patter song song because they know that she's kind of a theater geek, and they knew that if they could tell her that Charles was basically going to be a total failure at the patter song, that she would want to go and watch him on stage. So she left the interrogation room unattended, and Oliver ended up placing the GoPro that Mabel got from Taubert in the room to record the interrogations. Mabel is pretty impressed by this. Her guys are doing a good job, and they put their hands into the middle, and Mabel says, "Want to make a podcast with me?" which is pretty cute. And then she says like, "Murder," and they all like walk away. So the one thing I did want to point out is we know that they don't have Ty or Bobo's interrogation on this tape because they were both before they ended up being able to get the GoPro into the room. So I don't think that Ty or Bobo did it, but we know that they don't have their interrogation footage. We then move to the bathroom where Loretta is crying. She's upset about Dickie possibly, you know, being arrested, and she hears Donna throwing up in the bathroom, and Donna blames it on nerves and says she's always been nervous during like the show season. And someone pointed this out on Reddit, but when you look at Donna, she is actually framed by the light in such a way that it looks like she's got wings behind her, like angel wings. The question really is like, is this supposed to be telling us that Donna is going to be the next to die, or is this some sort of like angel of death reference? But the person who posted it was Johnny Burned Hands on Reddit, and I did not notice this at all, so I thought it was so cool to see someone else's theory about Donna, and it was just a little tidbit where it kind of threw me. We also see Donna apply lipstick, which I believe is the Ruby Strippers color, which is the same color that both Loretta and Joy use, and we see Donna mess with her hair in a way that kind of looks like she might be wearing a wig. And Donna ends up saying, "As a mother, you spend your whole life looking out for your child and you'll do anything to make sure they're okay." And she ends up saying something along the lines of like she wouldn't have survived this without Cliff, and she loves him so much and that's why she's taking care of him. But there is this implication of like, is there something more going on with Donna? Is this just nerves, or is she sick? Is something more happening? You know, the throwing up, the possibility of her maybe wearing a wig. It's just a little bit suspicious. Maxine ends up coming up to Oliver and telling him that the show is pure Oliver Putnam, and we see them call Loretta up to the stage for her big moment, but she is, I think, in the lobby, and she bumps into Dickie, and he tells her that when Ben died on opening night, he had a fight before Ben passed away, and Dickie says that he's not upset that he hurt Ben's feelings because Ben was a dick, but that he knew the next morning Ben would rope him back into working for him and he would be trapped again. And so he says he couldn't take any more of it, and he asks Loretta if she understands what he means, to which she says yes. I think that Loretta in this moment, and they intended to do this, they wanted to make Dickie look suspicious and like he was the murderer based on the fact that he couldn't take it anymore, and the fact that, you know, he felt free once Ben died, and then once Ben came back, it's kind of implied that Dickie pushed him down the elevator shaft here. So Loretta seems to think that that's what happened, that Dickie ended up murdering Ben because he just couldn't take it anymore. And so she ends up apologizing to him, saying that none of this should have ever happened to him, and he tells her that it's not her fault and that she's the best part of these last few months, and they hug. So obviously she's apologizing because she feels like it's her fault that Dickie was ever put in this situation in the first place. Loretta knows how difficult Ben is, and she feels like she has hurt Dickie by putting him into this life. She's called onto the stage, she passes Oliver, and he pulls her aside and ends up saying that he loves her and that he does trust her, and kind of apologizing to her, and she doesn't really have a chance to respond because she's going on stage. And so she goes up there and we see her start to sing her song, basically saying that if they want those kids, they'll have to go through her, and that for the sake of a child, she'd give her life completely. And as she is singing this, we see the cops come and get Dickie. They're not cuffing him. I think they're just asking him to come down to the station to be talked, to be questioned. But she is flipping out about this. And before she can even get through her song, she admits to the murder of Ben Glenroy. She says that he was awful and that she poisoned his stupid protein smoothie, and then when he came back she pushed him down the elevator. And they arrest her. Oliver starts to freak out about this. Dickie's looking heartbroken. Everyone is feeling really shocked, and then Oliver has a heart attack again. And so they're calling for help. We end on this cliffhanger. We're on the edge of our seats. We don't know if Oliver's okay. Is he alive? What's gonna happen with Loretta? What's gonna happen with the show? And you know, that's the end of the episode. So I thought that this was probably one of the best episodes of the season. Actually, no, this was the best episode of the season so far. This was my favorite episode. I loved everything about it. I found it so enticing. I was on the edge of my seat watching it. I loved the music bits. I loved the songs. I loved everything about it. I loved the ending of it and the way that we're all like on the edge of our seat wondering what is next. But yeah, that is what happened in episode 8. Sits probe. So now we get to get into the theories of the episode. So the first theory we have is kind of based off of what we saw with Donna in the bathroom. So we have this theory that Donna is sick, that she murdered Ben, and that she knew that the show was going to be a flop, that Ben was difficult to work with or was somehow threatening her and Cliff, and she didn't care if she was caught because she's trying to sustain a future for Cliff and she's dying. She didn't care about herself. She was doing this to protect her child. So there are a couple of reasons why she might have been, what would have provoked her to kill Ben. So one of them is the theory that I had last week where we had mentions of the play The Producers, and it's all about a show on Broadway that is purposely a flop so that they can embezzle money from it and the IRS won't look into it because it's a flop, so they expect it to lose money. And we've heard Donna say quite a few times during this season that she's burning money, that they're losing money, etc., etc. And so this kind of suggested to us that it's possible that Donna and Cliff are somehow embezzling from the show in one way or another. And to go along with this idea of them embezzling money from the show or stealing money from the show somehow, using the show to make money in a non-traditional format. So like they don't need the show to be a success in order to make money off of it. We have the strips of paper. And I want to shout this person out because this was amazing. But Gwendolyn Moonfall on Reddit created a shredded paper puzzle where she basically took all the pieces of the paper that we have seen Howard produce and put them together in her best prediction of what the piece of paper was. And so what we can see from it is that it says something about an independent contractor, something about the actor hereby agree, blah, blah, blah. And then I think it says February 16th, 2020. 2 or 3, says again something about an independent contractor, and then it says be paid at signing, be paid at 30 days, be paid on opening night, and then it says this agreement something insurance something. So a lot of people have been saying that they believe that Donna and Cliff, or maybe just Donna, took out an insurance policy on Ben's life because he was performing on stage and murdered him so that they could collect that insurance money. Another theory very similar to this is that they weren't trying to collect insurance, but were actually attempting to not have to pay Ben on opening night, and so that's why they murdered him. So the document is something else, some requirement to pay Ben as an independent contractor. They didn't want to pay him, so they murdered him. But basically the overarching idea here is that Cliff and Donna are somehow profiting off of the show in a non-traditional manner, whether it be because they're embezzling money and the show's failing, whether it be because they have an insurance policy and they knew they were going to murder Ben, or whether it be because they were trying to not pay Ben for something that they owed him for, knowing that they didn't have the funds to be able to do it. So these would all be reasons to murder Ben. Maybe they were embezzling money and Ben found out about it and decided to try and get a cut of it, so they killed him to get him out of it. But Donna and Cliff are another mother-son duo, and we've got a lot of like mother-son information in this season that suggests that there's some sort of familial relationship with a mother and a son that has to do with the murder of Ben Glenroy. And if it's not going to be Dickie and Loretta, it's got to be Donna and Cliff. The other theory that I have, because right now I feel kind of conflicted, like I don't feel like it can just be Loretta or Dickie because they've been called out so much for being the murderers and everything has been pointing towards them, so I feel like they have to be red herrings. but in some sense I do feel like it's two different parties who have murdered Ben for two different reasons. So you've got the poisoning, maybe that was Donna and Cliff. They decided to poison Ben because he found out they were embezzling or they wanted the insurance money, etc, etc. Only for him to come back to life. They were like, oh crap, I guess we'll have to deal with him later. And then Dickie ended up pushing Ben down the elevator shaft because he realized he just could not take being roped back in with Ben. And that would make sense because Dickie was with Ben when he left the room to go up to his apartment, so he would be most likely to be like literally with his brother and have the opportunity to push him. But we also see Loretta leave the cast party early. The other thing is I really don't think that Loretta did it based on the fact that she was so shocked and thought that Dickie did it and was willing to go to jail to protect him. And what's kind of cool about this is I did predict this a couple videos earlier. I said that there would be some sort of moment where Dickie would be possibly accused or would be put at risk, and Loretta as his mother wouldn't let him take the fall for it and would protect him. And we saw that come to fruition in this episode, which was so cool. You know, it's really fun to guess and end up having some things be correct. And I am so excited to see who the murderer is. Those are my theories for this episode. If you liked this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all those YouTube things. Like I said before, I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers and I am so close. So please help me get there. Send this to a friend. Share it on Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Oh, season's flying by. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that I will be away the next 2 weeks. And so the videos are going to look a little bit different because I won't have all of my equipment with me. I will be filming on my phone and posting, you know, as soon as I can, but I'm also trying to enjoy my vacation. So I'm gonna do the best I can. Bear with me, and the videos might look a little bit different. They might not have the usual video overlay or like the pop-ups and stuff, but I still want to get my opinion and guesses out there before the end of the season. So I hope you guys are okay with that. I'm doing my best and I'm just trying to enjoy my time off. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week for another episode of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. Bye guys.